Welcome, my dear students. Today we are going to see the exercise of chapter 12 thermodynamics. Let us see the first question 12.1. A geyser heats water flowing at a rate of 3 liter per minute from 27 degrees Celsius to 77 degrees Celsius. If the geyser operates on a gas burner, what is the rate of consumption of the fuel if its heat of combustion is 4 into 10 raised to 4 joule per gram? So guys, here the question is that one geyser is running on gas burner and it is heating up some water within a given time. We need to find out what is the rate of consumption of fuel. That means what is the rate of consumption of the gas. Now first let us note down all the values that are given. The volume of water is given 3 liter per minute. Now for water 1 liter is 1 kilogram. So mass of water will become 3 kilogram per minute. Now the temperature difference is 77 minus 27, that means 50 degrees Celsius. So in Kelvin it can be written as 50 Kelvin. Remember, the difference of temperature will be same in Celsius and Kelvin too. Now the heat produced by the fuel, let us say QF, is given as 4 into 10 raised to 4 joule per gram. So that will be 4 into 10 raised to 7 joule per kilogram. And the specific heat of water will be required, and that is already we know 4.2 into 10 raised to 3 joule per kilogram per Kelvin. Now here heat absorbed by water will be equal to heat given by the gas fuel. So we can write the equation. For water we can write ms delta theta, more specifically mw sw delta theta, and that will be equal to heat given by the whole gas. Let us say the mass of gas or say mass of fuel is mf and the heat given by fuel per 1 kg is qf. So the total heat produced by the gas fuel will be mf into qf, and here we need to find out mf itself. So I'll make mf as subject, so we can write mw sw delta theta upon qf. Now putting all the values, mw is 3, sw is 4.2 into 10 raised to 3 multiplied by delta theta is 50 and divided by qf is 4 into 10 raised to 7. Solving this we will get 157.5 into 10 raised to minus 4 kilogram, or you can also write like 15.75 gram. So this is the mass of the fuel that is used in 1 minute. The whole case is about 1 minute, you know already. So finally the rate of consumption of fuel can be written as 15.75 gram per minute, or it is approximately 16 gram per minute. So here 16 gram per minute of fuel is used to increase the temperature of water from 27 degrees Celsius to 77 degrees Celsius. Now let us see question 12.2. What amount of heat must be supplied to 2 into 10 raised to minus 2 kilogram of nitrogen at room temperature to raise the temperature by 45 degrees Celsius at constant pressure? Molecular mass of nitrogen is given 28 and the universal gas constant R is given 8.3 joule per mole per Kelvin. So here the question is that you have been given nitrogen and you have to increase its temperature by 45 degrees Celsius at constant pressure. Then what is the heat required? The mass of nitrogen is given. First of all, let us note down all the values given. Here the mass of gas is given 2 into 10 raised to minus 2 kilogram, and the molecular mass or say molecular weight is given 28. So it is 28 gram per mole, or you can write 28 into 10 raised to minus 3 kilogram per mole. The required difference of temperature delta theta is 45 degrees Celsius, so we can also write 45 Kelvin. Now there is one important value which is required, that is Cp. Cp is molar specific heat at constant pressure for nitrogen. Now in the next chapter, that means in chapter 13, kinetic theory of gases, you will learn that for diatomic molecules like nitrogen, Cp is 7 by 2 R. I repeat, for all diatomic molecules, Cp is 7 by 2 R. This is not given here, but you have to remember because it comes in chapter 13. You will learn there in chapter 13 that how Cp is 7 by 2 R. Here you have to just remember it. We will also require mole number, or say number of mole for nitrogen. So that is mu, and mu is equal to m upon m. Small m, that is the mass of nitrogen, and capital M is the molecular mass of nitrogen. Now we can find the heat supplied to nitrogen gas. Let us say it is Q, then Q will be equal to mu Cp delta theta, where mu is the mole number and Cp is the molar specific heat at constant pressure, and delta theta is the difference of temperature. Here mu is m upon capital M. Cp is 7 by 2 into R and delta theta. Now here we can put all of the values. In the numerator, small m is given 2 into 10 raised to minus 2 multiplied by 7 multiplied by the value of R is given, R is 8.3, and the temperature difference is 45. Divide by capital M is 28 into 10 raised to minus 3 multiplied by 2. Now solving this, we will get something 93.37 into 10 raised to 1 joule. So it is 933.7 joule, or we can say that the heat required is approximately 934 joule. 934 joule. That is our answer. Now here is a long question. Question 12.3. Explain why A. Two bodies at different temperatures T1 and T2, if brought in thermal contact, do not necessarily settle to the mean temperature T1 plus T2 by 2. That means, suppose if you are having two bodies, one body is having temperature let us say 100 degrees Celsius and another body is having temperature let us say 0 degrees Celsius. If you bring them together in thermal contact, then it is not necessary that the final settled temperature of both the body will become 50 degrees Celsius. It is not necessary, right? Why it is not necessary? Because the mass and the heat capacity of both the object may not be same. See, if both the bodies, both the objects are having same mass and same heat capacity, then it is for sure that the final settled temperature will be T1 plus T2 by 2. Now B. The coolant in a chemical or a nuclear plant, that is the liquid used to prevent the different parts of the plant from getting too hot, should have higher specific heat. Means why it is necessary that the coolant, which is a liquid to cool down the plant, should have higher specific heat always? The answer is simple. Because coolant having higher specific heat will be able to absorb more heat. See, coolants are used to absorb the heat from the plant, right? Now, if the coolant is having, that means the liquid is having more specific heat, then for the same change of temperature, it will absorb more heat. Because you know the equation delta Q is equal to ms delta T, right? So if the specific heat is more, if S is more, then the heat absorbed by the coolant from the plant will be more. That means such a coolant which is having more specific heat will be able to absorb more heat from the plant, and so it will behave as a good coolant, right? Now see, air pressure in a car tire increases during driving. The answer is simple, because while driving, temperature of tire increases and so the pressure also increases, because we know that pressure is proportional to temperature. See, when we are driving, the tire will have jumps and bumps. That will increase the temperature of the air inside the tire, as well as due to braking and so on, the tire will heat up and so the temperature of air will increase. That will in turn increase the pressure, because as I said, pressure is proportional to temperature. That's why air pressure increases while driving. Now D. The climate of harbour town is having more temperature than that of a town in a desert at the same latitude. See, if the latitude is same, then normally the temperature should be same. But still we find that at harbour or at seashore, the temperature is always higher than the temperature in desert. Don't forget, we are talking about the same latitude. And also, we have to ignore the wind blowing at seashore or at any harbour. If you don't consider the wind blowing at seashore or any harbour, then you will find that the temperature at harbour is larger than the temperature at desert even. Why it is so? The answer is amazingly wonderful. It is because at harbour, humidity is more in air compared to in the desert. See, obviously at harbour, the humidity, that means the amount of vapor in the air, will be more than at desert. Now what happens due to this? See, when this vapor comes in contact with our body, then the temperature of our body is low compared to the temperature of vapor, obviously. And so the vapor get condensed. That means it is converted into water on the surface of our body. But while condensation, it will always release heat, because while vaporization it will absorb heat, so while condensation it will release heat, and that heat will be gained by our body obviously, and so we feel rather hot at the harbour compared to the desert. Alright. Now let us see question 12.4. A cylinder with a movable piston contains 3 mole of hydrogen at standard temperature and pressure. Remember, at standard temperature and pressure. The walls of cylinder are made of heat insulators and the piston is insulated by having a pile of sand on it. That means the piston and cylinder are adiabatic. By what factor does the pressure of the gas increases if the gas is compressed to half of its original volume? In short, an adiabatic system is taken filled with gas and it is compressed to half of the volume. Then we need to find out what will be the new pressure. First, let me note down the values given. First of all, it's an adiabatic system. The mole number is 3 mole, mu is equal to 3 mole. The final volume of the system is half of the initial. That means V2 is V1 by 2. And because it is standard pressure, so P1 is 1 atmosphere. Then we need to find out the final pressure, that is P2. Now before we move forward, you have to understand one thing, that for diatomic gases like hydrogen, nitrogen and so on, gamma is 7 by 5. Now this comes from chapter 13. Why gamma is 7 by 5? That is given in chapter 13, that is KTG, kinetic theory of gases. So here you have to just remember this value, that gamma will be 7 by 5. Now for adiabatic process, we know that PV raised to gamma is constant. So here we can write that P1 V1 raised to gamma will be equal to P2 V2 raised to gamma. Now what we need to find out is P2. So P2 will be equal to P1 and here I can write V1 upon V2 raised to gamma. But here P1 is 1 atmosphere, and from the value that V2 is equal to V1 by 2, we can say that V1 by V2 will become 2. So here at the place of V1 by V2 I can write 2 and raised to gamma, and gamma is 1.4. So we are getting 2 raised to 1.4. Now to find out 2 raised to 1.4, we have to use log. Here I will take x is equal to 2 raised to 1.4, right, and now I am taking log on both the sides. So here the power 1.4 will come in multiple and remaining is log 2. Now this is 1.4 and log 2 is 0.3010. So this gives 0.4214, that was log x. Now to find out x, we have to take antilog of this value, that means 0.4214, and that will come 2.638, or say it is nearly 2.64. So x is 2.64, that means 2 raised to 1.4 is 2.64. So that I can place in the equation and can move forward, that P2 will be equal to 2.64 atmosphere. That is our answer. Now let us see question 12.5. In changing the state of gas adiabatically from an equilibrium state A to another equilibrium state B, an amount of work equal to 22.3 joule is done on the system. We have to remember this, that this work is done on the system. If the gas is taken from state A to B via a process in which the net heat absorbed by the system is 9.35 calorie, then how much is the work done by the system in the later case? Take 1 calorie is equal to 4.19 joule. Here also we have to underline that this work is done by the system. The initial work was done on the system and next the work is done by the system. Moreover, the initial process was adiabatic, and there is nothing said about the second process. Rather, it is said that here 9.35 calorie of heat is absorbed. Let me underline that. This much heat is rather absorbed by the system. So obviously the second process is not a adiabatic process. In short, in the first process, that means in the adiabatic process, 22.3 joule of work is done on the system, and in the second process some net heat is absorbed and work is done by the system. We need to find out that how much work is done by the system in the second process. First, let us note down the values given. In the first process, 22.3 joule of work is done on the system. That's why it will be a negative work. See, when the work is done on the system, it is always negative. When the work is done by the system, it is always positive. Then in the second process, 9.35 calorie of heat is absorbed. So that has to be taken positive. So it is positive 9.35 calorie. But 1 calorie is 4.19 joule. So it will be 9.35 into 4.19 joule. That means it is 39.18 joule. This much heat is absorbed in the second process. So we need to find out what is the work in the second process, W2. Now for the first process, that means adiabatic process, we can obviously write that delta Q1 is equal to 0. It is adiabatic process, so delta Q will be 0. And so delta Q, which is delta U plus W, that will be also 0. Here I will write delta U1 plus W1 is equal to 0. That means here delta U1 will be equal to minus W1, but W1 itself is minus 22.3, so it will become plus 22.3 joule. So we are getting here change of internal energy, that is delta U1 equal to 22.3 joule. Now the same internal energy will be useful in the second process. In the second process, as per the thermodynamics first law, we can write delta Q2 is equal to delta U1 plus W2. Mind well, here I am writing delta U1 because the internal energy what we gained from the first process will be used here. So I have to put here delta U1. Now from this we need to find out W2. So W2 will be equal to delta Q2 minus delta U1. Now here delta Q2 is 39.18 joule minus delta U1 which is 22.3 joule. So that will give us W2, and W2 will be equal to 16.9 joule. So that is our answer, that W2 will be equal to 16.9 joule. So in the second process, work done by the system is 16.9 joule. Here this work is positive, so we can say it is work done by the system. Now let us see question 12.6. Guys, this is a very wonderful question, really very wonderful question. It is going to clarify a very good concept that is known as free expansion. Let us see. Two cylinders A and B of equal capacity are connected to each other via a stopcock. A contains a gas at standard temperature and pressure, while B is completely evacuated. The entire system is thermally insulated. This is important. Let me underline this. The entire system is thermally insulated. That means there is no exchange of heat possible. The stopcock is suddenly opened. Answer the following questions. A. What is the final pressure of the gas in A and B? B. What is the change in internal energy of the gas? C. What is the change in temperature of the gas? And D. Do the intermediate states of the system before settling in the final equilibrium state lie on its PVT surfaces? Let me explain it with this figure. Here is the condition. These are two cylinders of same capacity, and the first one is filled with gas at standard temperature and pressure. The second one is evacuated, that means there is vacuum here, and this is the stopcock, means it is one sort of valve we can say. So when you open this valve, obviously the gas will rush here, and in the final condition the gas will be distributed here in both of these containers, or say both of these cylinders. The pressure in the initial condition in the first cylinder was, let us say, P1, the volume was V1, the mass was M, and the temperature was, let us say, T. In the final condition, obviously the pressure will change, let us say it is P2, the volume is double, let us say it is V2, the mass will remain the same, the mass of gas will remain the same, right? And the temperature will also remain the same. Now why this temperature is remaining same, that I am going to explain. First of all, let me tell you that this is a case of free expansion. This is a case of free expansion. Now ordinary expansion, whatever we have discussed up to now, like a piston is moving and so on, is a totally different case than this case. Because when piston is moving, gas is doing some work on the piston. Alright, or piston is doing some work on the gas. Here piston is a hurdle for the gas. But in case of free expansion, here as soon as you open the stopcock, there is no hurdle. Gas has no hurdle. That's why here gas is not doing any work, because gas has no resistance. So gas is not doing any work. So the first thing what we can write is that here work delta W is always 0. Also, the entire system is thermally insulated. So we can also write that here heat delta Q is also 0. Thus, now the internal energy can be written as delta U, that is equal to delta Q minus delta W as per thermodynamics first law. But here delta Q and delta W is 0, that means delta U is also 0. Now that gives us a very important result, that because here delta U is 0, so the temperature will not change. That means temperature T will be constant. You know very well that when temperature is constant, internal energy is not changing. So there is no change in internal energy. Delta U is 0. That's why temperature is going to be constant. Now because temperature is constant, so we can say that PV will be also constant. So we can write P1 V1 is equal to P2 V2. And so I can find out P2, and P2 can be written as P1, and this will be V1 upon V2. But mind well, here the new volume, that is the volume in the second figure, is doubled. So we can write that V2 is 2V1. V2 is 2V1. That means I am getting P2 is equal to P1 by 2. Now P1, which is the initial pressure, that was standard pressure, which is 1 atmosphere. So it is 1 by 2 atmosphere. Now let us check one by one questions. The first question was, what is the final pressure? The answer is, final pressure P2 is 1 by 2 or say 0.5 atmosphere. That is the first answer. Then second question, what is the change in internal energy? As we already discussed that there is no change in internal energy, delta U will be rather 0. Then the third question, what is the change in temperature? Here also we have discussed that there is no change in temperature, so delta T is 0. Then the final question is, do the intermediate states of the system lie to its PVT surface? The answer is no, because the gas passes through intermediate unstable states. In between the initial and final state, gas is not in an equilibrium. It is rather passing through unstable states, means it is not at all in equilibrium. So it cannot lie on its PVT surface. That means the values of PVT will be continuously changing between the initial and the final state. Now let us see question 12.7. A steam engine delivers 5.4 into 10 raised to 8 joule of work per minute and services 3.6 into 10 raised to 9 joule of heat per minute from the boiler. What is the efficiency of this engine and how much heat is wasted per minute? See, here this is about an engine. It gives 5.4 into 10 raised to 8 joule of work and it uses 3.6 into 10 raised to 9 joule of heat, and we have to find out what is the efficiency. as well as we have to find out that how much heat it will release in the cold surrounding. First of all, let me put down all the values given. The work is given W is equal to 5.4 into 10 raised to 8 joule. The heat absorbed from the hot reservoir is 3.6 into 10 raised to 9 joule. We have to find out the efficiency eta, as well as we have to find out the heat released in the cold reservoir, that is Q2. Now that's simple. First of all, efficiency of an engine, that is eta, you know it is given by W upon Q1. Now the values are there. W is 5.4 into 10 raised to 8 and Q1 is 3.6 into 10 raised to 9. So that gives eta is equal to 0.15. Now if we multiply it by 100%, then eta will be 15%. So the efficiency of this engine is 15%. That is our first answer. Next, the heat released or say wasted is Q2, and Q2 is Q1 minus W, right? Because Q1 is Q2 plus W, so Q2 is Q1 minus W. Now Q1 is 3.6 into 10 raised to 9, so I can write 36 into 10 raised to 8 minus W is 5.4 into 10 raised to 8. This gives 30.06 into 10 raised to 8 joule, or you can also write that this will be nearly equal to 3.1 into 10 raised to 9 joule. So that is the heat wasted, that is Q2. And here is our second answer. Q2 is equal to approximately 3.1 into 10 raised to 9 joule. Here all the values are given per minute. That's why here the value what we are getting of Q2 is heat wasted per minute. So 3.1 into 10 raised to 9 joule per minute of heat will be wasted. Now let us see question 12.8. An electric heater supplies heat to a system at a rate of 100 watt. If system performs work at the rate of 75 joule per second, at what rate is the internal energy increasing? See, it's about a heater which is giving 100 joule per second. See, 100 watt means it is 100 joule per second. That much heat it is giving. And one system is performing work that is 75 joule per second. So we need to find out what is the rate of increase in internal energy of the system. First of all, let me put down the values that are given. Here the heat supplied by the heater is 100 joule per second. So the heat absorbed by the system is also 100 joule per second. The work done by the system is 75 joule per second. So we need to find out what is the change of internal energy per second. Now, as per the first law of thermodynamics, we can write that delta Q is equal to delta U plus W. So delta U will be equal to obviously delta Q minus W, and here delta Q is 100 joule per second and W is 75 joule per second. That means it will be 25 joule per second. Delta U, that is the increase in internal energy, will be 25 joule per second. I should add per second. Very simple question, isn't it? Now comes a graphical question. 12.9. A thermodynamic system is taken from an original state to an intermediate state by a linear process as shown in the figure. See, this is the initial position or initial state, and this is the intermediate state. So, the system is moved here in a linear process from D to E. Now, its volume is then reduced to the original volume from E to F by an isobaric process. See, from E to F, here it is moving under constant pressure. This is E to F in constant pressure, that means it is isobaric process. So, calculate the total work done by the gas from D to E to F. From D to E to F. Here we have to find out the total work. Now, before we go forward, we have to understand one thing, that we can find out work from the graph of pressure versus volume. Yes, we can find out work from a graph of pressure versus volume. How? Let us see. Look, this is a pressure versus volume graph itself, right? Now, the area below the line of the process gives the work. I repeat, the area below the line of the process gives the work. For example, if we are talking about the process from D to E, then this is the line of process D to E. Then the area below this line, let me show the area. Here I am drawing green lines to show the area below the line DE. So, the area of this portion, let me call it A1, gives the work done while moving from D to E. Yes, this area gives work from moving the system from D to E. Let me call that work as W1. So, area A1 will be giving me work W1. Now, when I am talking about the process from E to F, then I have to take the area below the line E to F. Let me show that. Here I am taking this area below the line EF. Here it is. Then this area, let me call it like A2, will give me work while moving the system from E to F, that is, let us say W2. So, this way, by finding out the area below the line of the process, we can find out the work. Now, here we have to find out work from D to E and from E to F both. First, we will find out work done by the system from D to E. Now, that is what we already said is W1, and W1 is equal to area A1. Now, look, this total area can be sought out by adding the area of this triangle plus the area of this rectangle. So, I will write that A1 is equal to area of triangle DEF plus rectangle FEBA. Alright. Now let us find out. The area of triangle is 1 by 2 base into height. Now this is base, and base you can see is 5 minus 2, that means it is 3. So it is 3 into height. Now height of this triangle is 600 minus 300, that means it is 300. Alright, plus the area of rectangle is length into breadth. So length is again 3 and the breadth is again 300. So it will be 3 into 300. So as a whole, this gives us 1350 joule. So this much work is done by the system. That is our first answer. Work W1, that is the work done by the system on the path E to F, is 1350 joule. Now work done on the system from E to F. See, while the system is moving from E to F, then it is work done on the system, because here the volume is decreasing. So volume decreases when the work is done on the system, on the gas. So gas is being compressed, that means the volume is decreasing. That means it is work done on the system while moving from E to F. Now that will be equal to W2, but W2 will be equal to, as we already discussed, minus A2. I am writing minus because it is work done on the system. Now minus A2, that means the area A2 will be equal to length into breadth. Now length is again 3 and the breadth is 300. So it is minus 3 into 300. Thus we are getting this work W2, that is minus 900 joule. This will be minus 900 joule. That is our second answer, work while moving from E to F. Now we need to find out the total work. The total work, let us call it like W, then this W will be equal to W1 plus W2. That means 1350 minus 900. So that gives us 450 joule. So the total work is 450 joule. That is our final answer. Here the total work is positive. That means this is work done by the gas. Alright. Now let us see the final question of this exercise 12.10. A refrigerator is maintained eatables kept inside at 9 degrees Celsius. If room temperature is 36 degrees Celsius, then calculate the coefficient of performance. Here it is all about a refrigerator. The temperature of cold reservoir is 9 degrees Celsius and of hot reservoir is 36 degrees Celsius. So we need to find out coefficient of performance, that is alpha. First let me put the values given. The temperature of cold reservoir T2 is 9 degrees Celsius. That means adding 273 you will get Kelvin, and that will be 282 Kelvin. The temperature of hot reservoir, that is T1, is 36 degrees Celsius. Here also adding 273 will get Kelvin, so it is 309 Kelvin. We need to find out alpha, that is coefficient of performance. Now coefficient of performance for refrigerators is alpha is equal to Q2 by W. If you have been given, let us say, heat pump, then it will be Q1 by W. Here alpha will be Q2 by W for refrigerator. But as you know that W is Q1 minus Q2. So here this is Q2 upon Q1 minus Q2. Now we know that Q is proportional to temperature always. That's why alpha can be now written as T2 upon T1 minus T2. Now we can put the values here. T2 is given 282 Kelvin, T1 is 309 Kelvin, minus T2 again 282 Kelvin. So this becomes 282 divided by 27. That means the value of alpha is now 10.4. So the coefficient of performance for this refrigerator is 10.4. Alright. So herewith students, I complete this lecture today. This is also completion of your exercise of this chapter, and as I always say, I'll repeat it today also, that the PDF of the whole writing work of this lecture is given in the description box. You can download it and can write the whole numericals from that PDF. Alright. So herewith signing off, Anshun Baldania. Take care.